and welcome to this video, which will give you some tips and tricks on 3D printing for especially model railroad, I would say. And this is it's a kind of an extra video which I make because I got a lot of questions, not just here on YouTube from you viewers, and that was from the last video where I printed out a residential building or actually a kit which I assembled, painted, and there was a huge interest for this, and I got a massive amount of questions, and not just here on YouTube but also Facebook and Instagram and other forums where I posted links to this video, and most of them is around printing 3D models, the process of doing that. And I got one comment here which is kind of representative. Hey, 3D printing looks so easy when you YouTubers do it, but please, can you make a video showing the entire process printing an item? And yeah, it's actually not that complicated that you might think when you hear, well, 3D printing, well, that must be something special, but it's not. It's not more complicated than printing text on papers. But we're gonna do that. And another question or type of question which is very common as well is this one that is from a user called Yellowbird. I downloaded a file from CG Trader to 3D print on my Anycubic. What settings should I use to print it to HO scale? Well, when I started out with 3D printing, I would say 2 years ago or 18 months ago, I downloaded free files from places like Thingiverse or CG Trader, of furniture or buildings, or there are millions of 3D CAD models out there, so it seemed like, wow, this is cool. But actually it turned out that most of these, I would say 9 of 10, just clogged my printer and didn't give any output at all. And that's because if you're printing something from wherever you find it on the internet, I typically would give you two advices. One, check that there is a photo of the printed item where they actually have painted it as well. Because, printing one thing is, it has to be adapted for 3D print, but it also has to be adapted for proper assembly and for proper painting, because otherwise it makes no sense. So that is one thing. And the other thing, if you have a resin printer, which I definitely recommend for printing tiny objects with high detail, is to make sure that there is a 3D model file with supports already. So check these two things. A photo of the actual printed item, painted and ready. What does it look like? Does it look good or not? And isn't there any photo at all? Well, most of them, there is no photos. And then I can tell you that people just been sitting and drawing in their CAD system, not having a thought about anyone printing this. Just exported it as an STL file and thinking that, well, now people can print it, but that is not the case. And to answer this question from Yellowbird, no, it's not possible to scale down, I would say, anything from full scale to HO scale, which is 1:87 or whatever scale you're using for your model landscape, because this will only clog your printer. The news is that the model has to be drawn to HO scale or TT scale or N scale or whatever scale you're working with. Otherwise, it will just clog your printer and end up with you having to spend a lot of time with maintenance. So with that said, we're starting off a print project. Now there are two links in this video up here, which you can click on. So I prepared one link to this Anycubic has a sales now, a Christmas sale for this X2 printer. It's a really good printer. It's really fast, and it's a 4K resolution display. So you can print everything for your model railroad on this device. So that's one of the links. Check that out. The other link is to all of the 3D models from Model Railroad 3D. So they have now 500 3D models uploaded on CG Trader, and there will be an additional 2,000 3D models during the coming year. So tons of good quality drawings there to download and to print. So let's get started with the print project.
Alright, so when you click on the in-video link, you will end up on this landing page, which hosts a listing of all the 3D model set from Model Railroad 3D. And as you see here, there are catenary, there are rail cargo, railroad technical structures. Most of them are for general use. Some have flags for special countries. And there's an industrial area and for the residential area as well. But we're going for a rail cargo item. I think it's a good start. We're going for this Euro pallets. So I'm clicking on that, end up on CG Trader, and here you can see that there are actual photos of the printed items painted, and they look fantastic. So that's a kind of insurance that the things we're buying here actually will print and look good when painted. So I add that to chart, and I think I will also add barrels, because barrels is a useful item as well. So see all 34 3D models, and down here we have barrels and tubes. So here are 55 gallons, 40 and 35 gallon barrels, and this is what they look like when painted. There are also wooden barrels in this set, so I add that to my cart and then proceed to checkout and fill out my payment detail. With that done, I can download these two files. Most 3D drawings are delivered in compressed files, so are these, and we get two. The first one is barrel and tubes. We choose to extract all, so extract all, and then it will create a folder which has the same name as the zipped file. And for each item there is a wireframe preview with an explaining text. So this is the 35 gallon plate barrel. Next, after that image, there is a model file, and the first one, which is called version 4 here in the end, is just the model without supports. Then it's the X1, which means there is one on support. There also might be files further down here. You have one, which means that there are 7 on each plate. So let's open Photon Workshop. This software is provided with a printer on a USB stick. It needs to be installed on your computer. Now, before we can start print, there is 2 configurations we need to do. So click on Configure, select the tab Machine, and check the box with the Anycubic Photon Mono X2 if that's the machine you have purchased. And after that we click on Save. Then we go to Slice Parameters. Here is the place where you enter the parameters for the resin you have purchased. And I'm going for the ABS-like resin from Anycubic in color gray. And well, I've been doing some trials on this. There is also in the datasheet recommended exposure times for it. So I'm going for 2.6 second exposure. And as you hover over the fields here, you also get a help window with some hints on what these values are all about. There is also an off value. It's 0.5 seconds. I leave that to 0.5. Below that you have the bottom exposure time, and the good setting for the ABS-like resin was 16 seconds. Then it sits firmly to the printhead during the print process, and it's also easy to remove once the print has been completed. So that is the settings you need to make before we can start printing. So click on Save, and then we close this window. Now we can instead open one of those STL files we have purchased. So let's go to File, or click on the Open icon, and then we select, well, let's start with barrel plate 35 gallon. Let's start by opening this file without the support so you can see what it looks like. It's just the barrel itself, and this is provided so the purchaser of this set can make a custom support, or if they're printing on a FDM, they can print it directly on the plate. However, since we're have a resin printer, we want this with support, and then it looks like this. So it has a bottom plate and support pillars, and then the item is on top of that. So all right, so well, I think since we have such big print plate on this X2, I want to print more than just one, so I will open instead this file which was called X7, which means it has 7 barrels on each plate. To the left here there's a menu. You have 5 icons. The top one is for moving the model around. The second one is for rotation, so you can rotate it to fit the print better. This is scaling, which is useful if you have barrels in the back of your layout or in the front. You can scale them up and down slightly. Mirror, yeah, if you want them to be mirrored. Or you can duplicate this print and print many of them if you like. But we're going for these 7, but I think I will also print some more items at the same print here. So I'm also opening, I think, of these pallets, Euro pallet. This is a single pallet, so I will open that to see what that looks like. Okay, it's printing standing up like this. Yeah, this will be good. So let's go for that one as well. I want to have also those which were stacked, and also here I've opened and included pallet jacks and a Euro pallet with frame. So now we have our print ready. I select my USB, which I've named Mono X2. You don't have to do that, but I have done that. And I'm naming the file to YouTube test print. So, and then I click on slice, and the program slices our model up. And you can see here is the first layer, the bottom plate. And if we scroll this scroll bar, we can scroll through all the layers up to the top layer like this. Let's now have a look at the printer parts before we start printing. This is a jar with a transparent bottom. The bottom film here is called a FEP, F-E-P. And it's often referred to that, so if you hear that, that's the thing they're referring to. And this one's going to be filled with resin. And this is the resin we're using, the ABS like from Anycubic. So I shake the bottle for like 20, say 30 seconds, and then I pour it into my jar. In the beginning I did a lot of cleaning of this jar, and I did a lot of maintenance, which I found over time was unnecessary. So what I do nowadays is that I typically never empty this jar from resin unless I have a failed print. So I keep it like this forever, more or less. I have this tool. This is also provided with the machine. It's a plastic scraper. And I do like this before every print. So the first purpose with doing this is to check for cured resin which has stuck to the FEP. And that feels like a bump on the FEP if you move this tool over it. Now, if you feel a bump doing this, then you have to empty the jar from resin and remove that before you can start printing. The second thing I check when doing this is any defects on this plastic film in the bottom, and they look like like patterns from printed items. Now this is a kind of new film since the printer is new, so I don't have any defects which needs maintenance, so it's okay. And the third purpose, of course, with this exercise is to mix or stir the resin before print, because it has a tendency to separate. Now, another check you need to do is also that you have removed the previous print from the print head. With that check, we're ready to go. So I reinstall the cover, I insert the USB and power on the printer. Now all we need to do is to hit print, choose that YouTube test print file, and then the play button to start the print. So now the print head will move into the bin or jar of resin, and the first layer will be created. So now we can see this is the first layer of a total of 411 layers, and the total print time is estimated to 1 hour and 23 minutes. If you like, you can terminate the print here. You can also pause it if you find, for instance, that you need to refill resin. Meanwhile, while that is printing, I'm preparing a jar with the isopropanol. This is the liquid in which we will clean the printed items when ready. And now actually the print is ready, and you can see now here that the print time was 1 hour and 24 minutes. So I click on enter there, remove the cover, and then we remove the print head from the printer. And then we have another tool which was provided with the printer, which is used to remove the printouts from the print head. It looks like this. So I just use this scraper without showing my arms in the video. And yeah, it's pretty good, don't you think? And there are all the pieces in the isopropanol. You can use a brush to clean the parts if you like, or you can just move it around in the isopropanol, and that will most often do just as well. So here are the printed parts. I put them on a piece of bathroom tissue, and I use the same type of paper to clean the top and the surface of printed parts as well. Now, rigid parts like these barrels, they can just be torn off the supports like this. It's well, they don't break ever because they're massive. So, you know, it's not a big deal. But if there are more delicate parts, you need to either remove the supports with a scalpel like this, or cut the supports away with a side cutter. So here are all the parts now. They are dried and cut away from their supports, but they need to be post-cured, because at this stage they still have a tiny amount of resin on top of the surface and they're very soft. So we're going to put it into a post-curing device, which is needed as well. So you need 3 parts. You need a resin printer, you need a post-curer, and you need the resin. So let's remove the cover from the post-curer and put all the printed pieces in there. And then this is also a washing device for 3D printed items, even though I don't use that currently. These type of tiny objects do not need all that long curing time, so I typically select from 1, 2 or 3 minutes maximum. So I let them sit there now, and this is the last step in the process of printing 3D items. Let's now have a look at the quality you can expect from resin printers like this Mono X2. These are the parts we just printed and post-cured. You can see there's no defects. It's the detail is fantastic. And let's have a look at some other parts which are printed and painted previously. This is a villa which prints in one piece. And the roof structure or roof texture here, it's a tiled roof. You can see in some magnification you can see the the lines from the layers, but this is not visible for the naked eye. It's just under a microscope you can see it. Here's another villa I printed and built. This one's printed in a kit form, and you can see here the walls, they look perfect, and if we look into the magnification we can still not see any layers at all. I printed a few masts using this Mono X2. This is from the German catenary set, Streckenmast, and yeah, you can see it looks perfect. If we look in the magnification view, it still looks perfect. It's just fantastic. Here's another type of mast with a transformer. If you go to magnification view, you can see the detail in this print. It's yeah, it's fantastic actually. Now let's have a look at a weekly type maintenance. With the printer there is filters provided like this one, and this filter is used to filter the resin in the jar in the printer and pour it back into the bottle. This is to make sure that you remove any cured resin particles from the resin, otherwise they may damage the FEP, the film. So I'm pouring it back into the bottle, and then I'm removing the last resin from the jar using that plastic scraper, and then I shake the bottle and then I pour it back into the jar, and the printer is ready for another go.
Alright, so I hope the information provided in this video will help you to get a head start in 3D printing for your model landscaping, and avoiding all the common, beginners mistakes which I went through with just failed prints and a lot of maintenance, which is definitely not what you want when you get started with something new. So that's the purpose with this video. I thank you very much for watching this. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, enable that little bell, and you will get a notification once next video gets published. Until that happens, see ya.